That's my program, my podcast voice and name. It's Michael Vasquez. And I'm happy to be here. I'm speaking with Binghamton University, the College of Libertarians, the students here. I don't know who's controlling this. You may want to put me on the main screen. I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I'm somewhat of a not a technophobe. Technophile? Technical illiterate, I suppose. And so what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be having a conversation today. And we're going to be talking about quite a few different things. I really want to try and get my picture into the main screen. How do we do that, guys? Anyone know?
You go to view.
To where?
At the top right corner, there should be a little box that says view.
Yeah.
Go to speaker view. If you click on it, there should be an option called speaker view.
No, I'm in it. And it's giving me you at the moment. See, that's everybody. I want that. Yes, folks, there's always technology. Yeah, and when I go into speaker, it's going to you. So I don't know if you've got control over it all.
Okay, so if you want to see yourself on your own screen, what you could do is, do you see a little box with your name on it? And you see a little image, right? An image within an image, right? You see all the participants on like...
Yeah.
Are you in full screen, right? Okay. Yeah. So if you hover over your name, the top right corner of that, there should be a three... Yeah. It looks like three dots. You click on three dots and you hit pin video.
Oh, no, see, someone got me. Okay. That's it. Good. We're good. So let me go forward. Yes, folks. This is the fun and joy of it being live on the internet, as opposed to being in person, which is a lot more fun. But it's part of and you know what? I'm happy that people got to see there is challenges in this world. And the fun thing that we got to see is working together with a couple of people with a little bit of communication, even through the internet. What was the next thing we saw? It's resolved. We got it fixed. Isn't that the greatest expression of America that you've ever seen? We have a plan. We execute the plan. The moment the plan starts, everything changes. We communicate with each other. And then suddenly, through that communication, we resolve all the issues because some people are better at different parts of that process. We put those minds together and we execute, and suddenly we're all together again. This is what America is supposed to be about. That isn't what we're seeing right now. And that's what we're going to be speaking about to an extent. And I'm going to be talking with you. You're going to give me your questions. It's going to be feedback back and forth. And it's going to be a wonderful time. But I want you to keep that theme in mind, that it is that communication. It is that unity, that ability to communicate that is one of the most essential things that we need in America to move forward. It is one of the most essential needs that we have for the youth of America to make our nation even better than whatever anyone wants to think. Whether you think it's great or it was never great, like Governor Cuomo, it doesn't matter. We move this nation forward by working together. And sadly, that's not the current case. And I'm going to be talking a bit about that. But let me stop for a second. Let me take a step back. Who's talking to you right now with the whole big, wonderful thing in the background there? I'm Michael Vasquez. I am a candidate for the Broome County Legislature. I am a political commentator for the last 15 years now. I've been a stockbroker. I've lived in Moscow, Tbilisi, doing international trade. And I'm a kid from the Bronx. At the moment, this kid is 52, but I'm a kid from the Bronx. So I've gone through a few different things, including the Marine Corps, which I don't mean to make sound minimal at all. It's a big part of my life as well. And it's that combination of all those things that have brought me to you guys today. In fact, you may recall I have been speaking with you guys before. Just about a year ago, almost to the day, I was over in, it was 2019 that I was speaking with you guys. And I want to start off with a little bit about that. Let's bring ourselves together, because I don't know how many people who are watching this right now remember my speech in October 2019, or were here with me. Anyone? Okay. I'm not getting any indications that sound like yes. So back in 2019, I was speaking about the government control and a loss of our freedom. And today I'm going to just follow that up. So last year, America was faced with several problems, if you may recall. I know it's the politically distant times, but back a year ago, there was an absolute crisis devastating to the nation. People thought that they were going to die left and right, all over the place. It was called the e-cigarette vaping disease. We didn't know what it was. We just knew that people who had e-cigarettes and or vaping were dying. And they were dying in the dozens. And everyone lost their minds. The entire nation, we didn't see anyone shut down, but we did see that New York State, Michigan, many states came out with this massive wave of force and restrictions. And they tried to eliminate the e-cigarette industry. And they tried to demonize people who were vaping and using e-cigarettes. Now, if you remember a year ago, it wasn't that long ago, everyone was terrified. Everyone was afraid that vaping was going to not only kill the people who were vaping, but the people who were around them. Does anyone remember what the CDC said in February 2020? This year. Just about, 8 months ago. Most people won't, because it wasn't publicized. Not only because of what's going on with COVID, but more importantly because the wave of hysteria had already passed. Because the numbers weren't increasing, and the government had already gotten what it wanted to get. What we saw is that CDC stopped issuing any kind of guidance on the e-cigarette vaping problem. They were done. 2,807 people had died because of the vaping issue. I misstated that. There were 2,807 cases and 68 people died because of the vaping crisis, which we found out was because people were adding vitamin E acetate and cyanide and THC to their vaping solutions through the black market. Now, that had nothing to do with any of the things their freedoms that were taken away from them and everyone else in America. But it was the fear that moved us forward. Also in 2019, when I was speaking to this group, we were talking about the red flag laws. Some people know them as ERPOs, or Extreme Risk Protection Orders. It's something that's been passed in 17 states. New York State was one of the most recent ones to pass it. I am adamantly against this, and we were promised with absolute certainty that if we passed the red flag laws, we would eliminate gun crime. That's how it was presented to us. It would make you safe. Even though last year, 2019, 2018, I had interviews through my political commentary with several assembly members and state senators and lawyers. And when I spoke with them about this law, each and every single one of them told me it's a broken law, it's a flawed law, it doesn't work properly. It destroys people's rights. It unfairly causes people to be punished without ever executing a crime. Let me ask you, does anyone know how many red flag actions, these extreme risk protective orders, have happened since the law was put in place? You can wave a hand if you know, if anyone has an idea. Anybody? No? Zero. No. There have been, actually, as of, I believe it was October of 2019, I believe, 129 cases where they had gone into someone's home. They took their firearms, their property, in several of these cases, took their kids and took them to the state, because if your home is so dangerous that the government's going to take your Second Amendment right, if it's so dangerous that you are considered a danger to yourself and the community without ever breaking a law, then that home, by definition of New York State law, Child Protective Services, that home is too dangerous for your children. And so the government's taking your kids away as well. 129 times that happened. And the funny thing that happened since October of 2019, the media stopped talking about it. Nobody knows what the final number is. I am still, to this day, when I knew I was going to be having this conversation with you, I reached back out to New York State, to the Office of Court Administration. And I left them the message. I've been trying to reach out to them to get this number. How many red flag actions have happened in New York State? How many people have been subjected to this penalty without ever committing a crime? And no one has spoken to me. No one has published the number. It's not on any file. The government doesn't make it available to anyone without request. No news agency has bothered to be even looking at it. As far as I know, I'm the first one in New York State asking for these numbers. Because everyone forgot about it. Because we're not afraid of being killed in a mass murder. Except we've been told repeatedly since 2013, when we had to get the New York SAFE Act, we've been told and drilled into our heads, every time someone gets shot, it's the gun's fault. We need to get rid of guns. Kamala Harris has promised that within 100 days, if she had the power, she is, as president, she would put out executive orders to take away our guns. This has been, Joe Biden has also fallen in line with that same mentality. We have former members, former Chief Justice Stevens, former Justice, Supreme Court Justice Stevens, has come out and written an article saying that we need to remove the Second Amendment. We have this huge press. Remember Beto in the debates? He said directly to the cameras, to the nation, I am coming for your ARs and your AKs. I'm taking your rifles and guns from you. It isn't even a hint. It wasn't even a question anymore. This is a blatant, outright fact. And it is such an important thing. This is our fundamental Second Amendment rights. It is of the few things that are delineated and made absolutely clear at the very beginning of our government, of our nation. It was the Second Amendment. Placed second only to the First Amendment, our right to free speech. And it's there to back up that free speech. You can't take away my speech because I can defend myself. If you try to silence me by force, I can defend myself with equal force. That's the heart of the Second Amendment. And we don't even know how many Americans in New York State have been denied this opportunity, that they have been denied this right. Again, and most importantly, without ever committing a crime. That's pretty impressive. So I want to emphasize how insane that is. I mean, that's just insane. So in 2019, going into 2020, anyone have any idea, and this is interactive, does anyone have any idea what is the same thing in 2019 as 2020? Anybody want to make a guess? Because there's one absolutely consistent fact from 2019 throughout all of this year that we have seen absolutely staying the same. In fact, we can go back about 100 years and it's pretty much the same, but most recently in the last 20 years. That's a tough question, huh? Okay, I'll give you an answer. Fear. We are meant to be terrified. We are terrified. We're terrified of mass shootings. We're terrified of school shootings. We're terrified of the next disease that's going to wipe us all out, that will be the Black Plague and kill us all. We're terrified of not having enough food, of having affordable housing. Name the issue. We're terrified. It's all going wrong. Everything is falling apart. There is nothing right anymore. And in 2020, we had the wonderful pinnacle of that in COVID-19, which was touted as the next Black Plague, that everyone was going to die. Millions of people are going to die. And if we don't do exactly every single little thing that a very small elite group of government agents or elected officials tell us to do, we're all going to die, and that's all there is to it. And if you don't listen to every single word they say and do everything that they tell you to do, well, then you're evil. Just like if you have an AK-47 or an AR-15, or in other words, a semi-automatic rifle, you are evil because that kills people. You're part of the problem because you're killing people. By the way, there's 160 million people that own firearms in the United States. In 2020 alone, since March, since COVID shutdowns, we've seen at least 6 million new people go out and become firearm owners, both handguns and rifles, because people aren't feeling safe, because they want to protect themselves as the Second Amendment allows. And in all of that, it is 99.9994% likely that if you own a firearm, you are completely safe and will never use it to harm another human being. That is a fact. And if you ever doubt that, take all of the gun shootings, divide that by 330 million people. Guess what the number is going to come out? 99.9994% of the time, it's not. There's a handful of people. So we have fear. And this is an important thing to understand, because we are trading off the illusion of safety, the illusion of protection, the illusion of utopia for fear. And we are being controlled completely by that. It's that fear. Oh, we're afraid you're going to hear the wrong idea. You know who said that? Twitter, Facebook, Google. When they shut down the New York Post, there was no longer any way to deny this. Much like when Beto said, yes, I am coming for your AK-47s and your ARs and your long rifles. You don't deserve to have a gun. When they said that, it's the same thing when Twitter said, we're shutting down the New York Post. A member of the press, a credible 200-year-old institution that no one disputed. They came out with a story and they ran with it. And here comes Twitter going, we have to protect the public because, we can't tell everyone this story. It's bad for Biden. Now, here's something really interesting to think about that. Whoever asked Twitter to do that? Where is it in the description of Twitter, we're going to make decisions to protect you? We're going to separate stories and tell you what's the right one to listen to and what's the wrong one to listen to. What's the right and wrong message? Because their answer is to this unasked question is, well, we have to protect you. Why? I didn't ask you to do that. It's not in your charter. You didn't ask me when I signed up for Twitter, and do you want to be protected? You've never asked me in a poll. But they've decided that they're going to do this because Twitter's smarter than us somehow, according to them only. And so is Google. And so is Facebook. And they're doing it because that's what the government does every day. You have to be inside your home. You have to isolate. It was County Executive Jason Garnar, and I don't mean to pick on him at the moment. Many politicians did similar things. But in our local community, he told people in, that was April, May, he said, Operation Crush COVID. You should be locked in your home every other day. You can't even walk outside just to walk around your block to get fresh air unless it's every other day. In other words, you have solitary confinement and we only let you out once every other day. And that's only to walk around the block, maybe to get food if you didn't stock up. Because the government is going to protect you. And the news media said, yes, that's a fantastic idea. We're so happy you're doing that. We're not going to question it. That is a wonderful thing. By the way, that was completely illegal. There is no constitutionality to what County Executive Garnar said. In fact, when he had the press release, the public press release live, he said, this is an unofficial announcement. What does that mean? Does anyone know what that means? How can an elected government official use the full weight and opportunity of his power to tell the public something that is unofficial that he is officially stating? That is hypocrisy. More importantly, it is fear. I am using the full weight of my power, and you dare not question it, because if you question it, well, then you're evil. You don't care about dead people. You don't care about people who are sick. You're just an evil person. No, I don't think so. I do believe that the danger is not only to, as we know, certain groups at risk. The danger is to the fact that we have government overreach to an extent so extreme, there is nothing in the history of America that can match it. And in fact, the only way we can match this kind of extremity of action is to go to some of the most authoritarian dictatorships in the world, in the history of mankind, and that matches up to what we're talking about now. That's pretty terrifying. Because we should, no matter what the government is doing, even if they were absolutely correct, that does not take away my First Amendment right, your First Amendment right, the newspaper's First Amendment right to say, I have a question. We should always be able to question them and say, I don't think that's right. Or to say, no, I'm going to walk outside my house because I can do that. You know what? When we had polio in this nation, did the nation shut down? Spanish flu, influenza, you named a disease, mumps, measles, whooping cough. When did, you named a disease that still exists in the world today, and we don't stop people. Now, I know a lot of people go, Mike, you are just being so insensitive. No, I am. I understand and appreciate people have died. And that is sad. And that is important. And we must take action, and we can take action as a nation and as individuals, and more importantly, as individuals, to try and prevent this. And you know what? We have. We have social distancing. We wear masks every time we go out. We have reduced our ability to live our lives to an extremity never seen before, and we have caused incredible damage to ourselves as individuals and to our society. We are doing something. But is it the right thing? Has anyone stopped to say, is this worth it? And there have been a few people, very few people. And the media has almost always immediately silenced them. Now, I'm going through a couple different scenarios here, and I want to tie this together because it may seem a little bit disparate, and you may go, well, Mike, where are you going with this? I don't get this. I mean, I get fear, but wait a minute, you're talking about guns, you're talking about COVID, you're talking about, our lifestyles, you're all over. It's all the same thing. We're talking about the First Amendment. It's all the same thing. What we're talking about, very simply, is only one thing. We're talking about the emotional manipulation of the public for political gain. At the end of the day, that's what this is. Because when newspapers can't write articles, and when we can't walk outside our homes, and when we can't question what's going on, at the same time that we are having an unknown number of citizens being stripped of their properties, stripped of their children, without ever having committed a crime, then we have a very big problem going on right now. And then if you want to throw in the economics of it all, well, that's just even worse. Anyone have any idea how many trillions in debt we are right now?
Record amount.
Well, thank Ben. Actually, it's last I saw, I may be wrong here. You can double check me while I do this. It should be about $27.2 trillion. If I'm wrong, someone correct me. And that's without the next round of stimulus, which is going to be approximately $1.2 to $3.6 trillion, depending on who's counting. Think about that. That is a ridiculous number. And quite honestly, there is nobody that you tell, hey, there's $27 trillion. Nobody knows what that number means. There is no logical way that you can quantify that in your head and go, $27 trillion. Yeah, I get it. It's like having $5 in my pocket. No, it's not. That is an unimaginable amount of money. And that is a number that is so astronomically high that we can't even begin to understand what kind of problem does that cause. $27 trillion in debt and counting. That number is going higher. And we could stop pretty much everything. You could stop all the spending in the government right this second, and that number would still go higher by millions and billions of dollars. Because interest, the money's already owed. Interest is still being accrued. So even if you stopped every dime of spending, it's going higher. So this is a problem that is going to continue. And the answer is, don't talk about it. Don't ask about it. On the local level, state level, the federal level, don't ask about it. Because if you're asking about it, well, that's a problem. Because we need to do this. Because we have to take care of the fear. And you are afraid, right? You're afraid of a mass shooting. You're afraid of a school shooting. You are afraid of those racists that are out there somewhere targeting you. And if you're not afraid of them, well, then you probably are them. Isn't that what we're being told right now? If you're not with BLM, well, you must be a racist. If you're not with Antifa, you must be a racist. How dare you complain about the fact that we are burning down buildings and homes and killing people? 35 people have been linked to deaths attributed directly to the riots. They're not protests, they're riots that were done by BLM and Antifa in cities throughout this nation. That's insane. And the only way you can get away with that is people are more afraid. And I don't think they're not afraid of the riots as much. I don't think we're all afraid of the riots as much as we're afraid of being ostracized and said, oh, you're evil. You're talking about that? You're evil. I have in my campaign, I have almost from the beginning been told, and definitely in the moment I said I support police officers that do not commit abuses of power, that our local, in this region, in the southern tier, the local police force, since they've had body cams on, have shown and proven that they have had 0 cases of police abuse. 0. That is an extraordinary example to set for police across the nation. Why wouldn't we want to celebrate that? Why wouldn't we support that? And for supporting that, for celebrating that standard that we should expect from every police force, but somehow we don't, I was told I'm a racist. Look at my picture really good, because they're telling you this is the face of a racist. I am against black people, according to them, which I find quite funny every time I wake up in the morning and look in the mirror. But it's about fear. How dare you question that? You can't question that. Because if you question that, then you would have to question why in Philadelphia did people decide that the perfect answer to responding to the police, well, let me put it in perspective here. According to the news at this moment, according to video evidence that we have at this moment, there was a man, Walter Wallace, who had issues. Police were called out twice earlier in the day to deal with him and his issues. No one died. No one was shot. No one was hurt. The third time they came out, Walter now had a knife. He was endangering people. When the officers came, as we see in the video evidence, they came to the scene. Walter came towards them aggressively with a knife in hand, and officers retreated. He continued to move forward to them, and as they pleaded with him to drop that deadly weapon, he didn't. He got shot. Not a crazy scenario here. That's a fact. Now, that scenario I have just described to you, and that's all anyone knows. That is all the information that everyone, the common person in America, has, just that information, which we glean from predominantly a video. And the natural, normal reaction is, let's go burn down a bunch of buildings and I want to rob that Gucci store. And then people in New York City, because that happened in Philly, so people in New York City decided, hey, I'm going to go throughout Brooklyn and Manhattan, and we're going to burn down a bunch of buildings. We're going to tear down a bunch of businesses. We're going to steal everything in those businesses because that guy with a knife got shot by police officers. Does that make sense to anyone? I mean, seriously, let's stop and think about it. Throw away all the fear that you're supposed to have at a moment. Does that sound like someone was headhunting another human being because of the color of their skin? No, it sounds like someone's defending themselves from someone with a lethal weapon who had the intent to harm someone. And the natural reaction to that is not, let me go down to Bob's Big Burger. Let me go to the Burger King. Let me go to Joe's car shop or the little bodega on the corner of the street. Let me break down their doors, take everything they have, and then burn the place. That is not a natural reaction. That makes no sense. If you tell me you're upset because he was, and you want to say, well, that's just because the police were evil, which does not make sense to me in that example. There may be cases where they are, but that isn't one of them. And if you want to make that argument, fantastic, go out, protest. I'm all for it. It is a fundamental right of the United States to peacefully assemble. People like to leave those words out. Peacefully assemble. Notice it didn't say mostly peacefully assemble. I know CNN loves to tell us it's mostly peaceful. You know, it's mostly a fire. Things are mostly getting burned down. A cop was mostly ran over. It's stupid. But we're allowing that because the answer is, and the fear isn't the fear of that. The fear of speaking up is that, oh, well, you're not like everyone else. You're not doing what the news media told you. You're not being submissive to a couple of elites, some of them in media, some of them in the government. So you must be evil because those same elites are now labeling you and saying you're evil and you must be a racist and you must be a white nationalist because you didn't agree with going out and destroying Bob's business. And Bob didn't even know what was going on. Bob didn't even live in the same section of town that this happened. Or, you know what? Bob's in another city. And he is getting punished for something he didn't do. Notice, we come back to the same thought. We're watching people get punished for something where no crime occurred, where nothing happened. Look at Seattle. How many days has Seattle and Portland been in riots? Again, not protests, riots, because they're not peacefully assembling. When you take over a section of a city, when you destroy a building, when you endanger someone's life or someone is killed, that's not peaceful. So throw out this whole idea of it's a protest. No, it's not. It's a riot. And we see that these cities are reacting to things happening in other cities. And when they react to those things in other cities, their natural answer is, well, let me go and destroy something. Let me destroy someone's life, their property, their livelihood. Let me destroy their mental and emotional health and well-being. And if anyone dare question it, let me go out and say, hey, you know what? Well, you must just be a racist. And that's the answer. And you can't question this. In 2019, I was talking about our loss of freedom and the control of the government over our lives. And I left out fear. In 2020, I'm looking back at that, and we can go back year after year after year, and I can show you the growth of fear in each and every one of those events. Steve Scalise, Representative Steve Scalise, was shot on a baseball field by a maniac with a rifle because he saw a bunch of Republicans in a field playing baseball. And so he had to kill them because that's the natural reaction, he thought, because he's a maniac. There are people in America that support that. And today, in 2020, are saying, hey, he wasn't that far off. Really? Because it's a Trump supporter. We have actually seen people in America today do the same thing that maniac did because, again, he picked out people by their political preference. We now have Don Lemon on CNN has publicly stated that he had to get rid of friends of his because of their political position. What? Really? Are we what kind of fear mongering is this? Because this is that's like talking about the McCarthy list. This is stuff that's been done in Germany during the 40s, in the Soviet Union after that war in the 40s, where people are being isolated and targeted. You're an enemy of the state. You're a bad person. And so you must be punished. But I didn't do anything. There is no law I broke. I at worst said, I have an opinion. Well, that's enough. That's a thought crime. You didn't think right. And by the way, you're in the school. This year, when you came back, as I recall, the students were all given books, 2 books from the university that you had to read on racial diversity before you could come back to school. You know what that is? Making sure you think right. Because how dare the university tell you you can't come back unless you read this very specific, very biased point of view. And you have to know it, and we're going to test you on it. It has nothing to do with what you want to do with your life. It has nothing to do with your personal beliefs. It is not optional to you, but it is a requirement because that agency says if you don't do it, well, it's as good as being a crime, and you're as good as being a racist, and so you're going to be ostracized. How dare they? How dare they? Harvey Stinger is out of his mind. And I have a problem with him on that. So we have to understand, and the point is, it is the fear that is being used to enable over and over and in so many different ways the ability to punish the American public without the American public ever doing anything wrong. And we now have seen it. It has gone from the red flag laws because we have to protect you to now COVID because we have to protect you to racism because we have to protect you. That's not what government's there for. That's not what private business is there for. That's not what information is there for. That's not what the First Amendment is about. We have to keep these things in mind, and we have to identify them. And when we start putting it up and go, look at all these things, they just match up and they all fit the same pattern. They have the same result, and they have the same damage at the end of the day. Suicides are going up. The number of people, drug and alcohol abuse are going up. The number of people who are suffering from domestic abuse are going up. Those numbers were going up even without COVID. They're going up worse now. They are somewhere between 30 and 300%. And guess what? Just like the numbers for the red flag actions, they stopped giving out the numbers on domestic abuse, drug abuse, and suicides. You haven't seen those numbers anywhere. They keep changing the field. Because if you actually had information, you wouldn't be afraid. If someone said right now, yes, many people have caught COVID and almost no one dies from it, you wouldn't be afraid. You'd still take precautions. You'd still help people who are at risk, but you wouldn't be afraid because there's nothing to be afraid about. It's not the Black Plague. There's a difference. There's a very, very big difference because they're telling us it's the Black Plague. 9 million people in America have at some point, and this is key, at some point they caught COVID-19. 9 million people right this second don't have COVID. They're counting numbers from January. The numbers haven't shifted to keep up with, well, where are we today? When they say, how many cases are there? They're including the cases from the summer. Did you notice that? Did anyone think about that? They keep counting those same numbers and just adding on to it. So it's more and more people have caught COVID. Yeah, but they don't all have it anymore. And 99% of them have recovered from it. It's not the Black Plague. And really, how many people, I will use the example in Broome County. 190,000 people live in Broome County, actually more. Well, census probably less. But here's the thing, and this is sad, I last saw 95, I believe it may be 98 people have died this year. How many people died last year in total? Again, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I want you to understand, take away the fear. We can protect people, whether it's from a firearm, some lunatic who has an illegal firearm and they're out trying to harm people. We can protect people from that within reason. We can protect people from things like e-cigarettes. When there's additives like cyanide being added into there, we can try and help people with that. We can protect people from COVID-19 to an extent. No one's ever going to be perfectly 100% safe. And anyone who's telling you that we got to wait for a cure, there won't be a cure that'll do it. We've got the flu. Name a disease in the world. It's still out there. We have cures. It's not 100%. You're never going to be 100% safe. But they're using this idea of fear, and the fear isn't really of the thing. It's the fear of being called out as someone who questioned them about it. And here's a wonderful thing that I just said, and I bet no one noticed it. I said, we're afraid of being called out for disagreeing with them. Who's them? Did we elect them? Do they own a business? Who are they? And why do we have to listen to them? And why do we have to be afraid when they tell us we must be afraid? It's not like we can't say, oh, we have different ideas, we have different opinions. We can. And it's important. It's vital. The reason why America is the greatest nation in the world. And by the way, America is the greatest nation in the world. And it's without question. All you have to do is look at the legal immigration numbers. Forget the illegal, 2 million people a year try to get into this nation every year. Throw that out the window. Let's look at what's the legal immigration numbers. How many millions per year are trying to get into America every year? You know how many people are trying to get out of America? About 20,000. Name another nation that has as many people trying to get into it as they do in America. There isn't one. How many people are trying to get into China? Who's trying to become part of North Korea? Who has decided that they want to give up this evil, horrible, oppressive capitalist system in the United States and take their happy butts on down to Venezuela? Nobody. But I can tell you, there's a couple million people from all of those countries that are trying to get here. Is America great? Absolutely. So why are we being pressed with this idea of fear? And I want to give you that thought because if you can, the easiest way to defeat fear, you're afraid of the dark, turn on the light. If you're afraid about something, talk about it, understand it, and come up with a solution for it. Whether that's a budget that's out of whack or trying to take care of the local beat cop on your neighborhood. Take away the fear, have a conversation and make a solution, and we come up with something far, far better. But if we're worried about the fear, all we get out of that is more fear and more submission and less freedom. I strongly believe that. But I've been talking a lot. Now, I want to hear from some of you guys. Tell me, if you disagree with me, I absolutely would love to hear it. Because I don't believe in shutting your voice down. I want to hear you tell me, Mike, that sounds great, but it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, tell me why it doesn't. I can't learn unless you tell me something. So I want to hear that. If there's something else that you want to ask me, please go right ahead. Any subject over the last 20, 30 years, I'm open.
So I just want to start with giving a bit of clarification about the book thing you mentioned earlier.
Sure, Ben. Which book?
So you mentioned that the university required students to...
Oh, yes. The two books for incoming. I don't know if it was for incoming or everyone.
So I'm personally a freshman, and I actually reached out to the university over the summer asking whether the book was required, and they specifically said that the book was optional but highly encouraged.
And let me mention something why I disagree with that, Ben. If they have materials that are backing that book up, and that you're going to be questioned on it, and
I wasn't questioned on it.
You weren't?
There was an optional project that we could voluntarily submit as a group, but it was optional.
Okay, it's not optional.
I've personally interacted with many other freshmen and have asked them if they did this project, and none of them said yes.
Okay. Here's what, and Ben, thank you for giving me that real world firsthand answer. And I don't mean to sound like I wasn't trying to cut you off. I truly was not. But it just gets me very emotional when I hear this, because if it weren't, they say it's optional because if they didn't, they're in a legal quandary. But when they say that there's a class, a project that you can do, every single person who did that is on a list, and everyone who didn't is on a list. So,
I totally get it. Like they said it wasn't required just to avoid being sued for the Hatch Act or something like that.
Exactly.
But and like I also have experienced a bit of the political discrimination because two of my roommates are pronounced Trump supporters. They actually hung their flag in the window of my dorm, and pretty much there were protests outside of our building, and the RAs pretty much made us take it out of the window.
See, and that's just wrong, because if you had a Biden sticker up there, or a Pete Buttigieg sticker up there, or an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sticker up there, they'd be okay. Well, that's discrimination.
Like the only reason why we ultimately took the flag out of the window was because the citation they used was fire hazard. So instead we put a Trump 2020 posted message in the window, at which point the RA told us to take it down, at which point my roommate, who was responsible for putting up this stickers, said, okay, fine, write me up so that your name can be on it, so that I could have a field day in court with you.
Yeah, because it's self-expression, First Amendment. And there's no reason why they should do that. None whatsoever. Because it's not interfering with anyone else. It's your right to express yourself, which Binghamton University has a major problem with. That's why the Department of Education is investigating Binghamton University since September 30th. I know, I saw the Pipe Dream article on it. It was miserable. It was a horrible article, and I commented on it.
The Turning Point USA incident?
That, and well, actually, there's more to it than just that.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, there's the tabling event. There's the Art Laffer event. Before that even happened, there were attacks on a young woman on Binghamton's campus in October of 2019 because she had political ideas and views that didn't agree with some sensitive people. So this is a bigger issue. And now we have your event that you're mentioning, which is I have a flyer in my window. It's as simple as just don't look in my window. Why are you looking in my window? But if you are and you don't like it, look away. This is the easiest expression of First Amendment. Your right to both put your voice out there and someone else to say, and I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. Why do you have to be given the fear of retribution by an institution, a massive institution with tens of millions of dollars connected to the government? Why do you have to go through that fear and that kind of oppression when you didn't commit a crime? They just don't like it. And they're using fear of their persecution and your being ostracized to make that happen. We need to call that out. And I tell you, that is absolutely no different than what I see with the red flag laws. It's absolutely no different than what I see with COVID-19, no different than when I saw what happened to people with vaping. It's just that now we're seeing them all come together at once in a bigger message of, yes, we can punish you without you committing a crime according to our laws, and we'll punish you anyway. They've been doing it isolated. Well, here's one law, here's another law. Now they're just putting it all together and saying, you know what, we're going to punish you. And by the way, you can't do anything about it, because if you do, well, you know, you're going to go out to the internet and speak to people. Well, Twitter, Facebook, Google, they're going to wipe it out. They're going to wipe out your voice. People should be screaming about this right now. I mean, literally, there should be no other conversation going on in the nation, in my personal view, because they have signaled that your voice can be shut off at any moment by any organization, so long as they have more people than you do. That should terrify you.
With respect to social media, are you familiar with Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act?
Reasonably, I am a internet content creator on many platforms, including my own.
So, are you in favor of Section 230 reform or abolition?
Reform, and it's tricky. See, it was they created a law for something they didn't understand. They set rules on what's a publisher and what is a platform before they understood what a publisher and a platform are and what their capabilities would be. They did it at the very beginning of the internet without taking into account or having a provision for, and that's going to change. Because it's one thing to say, hey, I got 2 sticks, I made fire. And then going, hey, did you see my commercial kitchen? They're not the same thing, but they're working on the same principle. Fire. It's a silly kind of argument, but it's the argument. The internet 30 years ago, 20 years ago, no, that's actually, yeah, I'm getting old. Sometime in the past is not the internet today. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no MySpace. These things didn't exist. Google didn't exist. You had, it grew into an entirely different thing that we could possibly understand. They were dealing with AOL then in its most basic form. Now we're dealing with Google, Twitter, Snapchat. Oh God, you guys know probably a dozen more than I do, I'm sure. And applications to even amplify that even more. And we're still creating more and more. How can we say that that law applies properly when it was based on technology, and a technology that we didn't understand and was brand new? It needs to be reformed. And we also have to make sure that we understand, when you act like a publisher, you are a publisher. When you go and you say, here, I posted out, I don't care what I posted out. You can post out a meme, a tweet. I don't care. I believe in the First Amendment. I am an near absolutist in the First Amendment. You can say anything you want. I don't care. There is no such thing as hate speech. Say whatever you want, as long as you're not inciting violence or saying something that is a absolute known lie. That's what, according to Supreme Court, that's understanding. So nowhere in that understanding, if Facebook, Twitter, if they're just platforms, then I should be able to, given that they are private companies and they have the right to set their own rules. But as long as they've set a rule that says I can pretty much say anything I want as long as I'm not being hateful or inciting violence, then I can send out anything I want to. They have nothing in their stipulation that says, hey, you can't say something that's an opinion we don't like or something that we think is wrong. You know, flat earthers are out there sending out messages all day long saying, hey, the earth is flat. I don't see disclaimers coming out from Facebook, Twitter, all of them saying, this information's in question. So because they're not, then they're biased in their system, which means they shouldn't be doing it because it's a biased system. You're picking certain things to attack and not others. If it's about making me safe, then, or to make sure I'm well informed, then make everything well informed. Well, that's impossible unless you deny me the ability to actually think. And it's on me to look at that flat earth information and say, well, based on what I know in science, that doesn't seem to be right. Let me look up and read and learn more and evaluate their claim versus the facts I can gather and make my own decision, because that's what freedom is. And sometimes people will make the wrong choice. Bully for the flat earthers. That's their right. I don't have to agree with it, but that doesn't mean I get to beat them down and subjugate them because they have that opinion. Unless they're trying to harm me or defame me, now we go into other laws that we already have that take care of that. But it's not for a platform to suddenly decide, today we have decided this is the thing we're going to correct because you don't know how to think. Because you're thinking the wrong way. That's dangerous. That's propaganda. That is probably the worst enslavement you could possibly have. It's not economic enslavement, it's your mental enslavement. It's putting your mind in a box and saying you can't get out of that. It's the same thing as when people say, Mike, you're black, so you're a Democrat. Why? What in that statement is a logical connection to that? Ice Cube's been beat up for even talking to someone who's not a Democrat about ways to improve his life and the life of other people around him. That's insane. Why would you say, ooh, you're trying to help people? You can't do that because you're the wrong color. Chelsea Handler, I just had a podcast about this last week, Sunday. And Chelsea Handler, she told 50 Cent he can't vote and he can't speak about his political views because of the color of his skin. Is that insane? Because I think that's insane. That's racism. That's sexism. And it's fear of being ostracized. It's fear of being called out. It's fear of being different. And you must be controlled. You must do what we say. That is horrendous. The amount of abuse that can be used to do that is incredible. And we got a taste of that in this nation once before under McCarthyism, and we rejected it wholesale. Well, now it's even more popular. It is even more prevalent, and it is more abusive. And we're not saying we reject it anymore. And that should terrify people. But who else has got a question? Come on, guys. Give me questions. I love it. It's not as fun as when I'm in person, because then it's a lot more connected, I know.
Okay, so going back to Binghamton and free speech.
Mhm.
So with the incidents with Binghamton being investigated by the Department of Education,
Yes.
what can you do as county legislator about this situation? What would be something that you would do when you're in office?
Okay, let me put on the political hat. And just for just people who are watching and letting everyone know, I wasn't going to use this background, my campaign background, because this isn't so much a political commentary. It's just a public commentary as a political commentator, except the whole Zoom thing crashed on me and I couldn't do it without having this background. But to answer your question, what can I do as a legislator? A lot and absolutely nothing at all, to be honest. There is no legal ramification I have available to me that I'm aware of at this time. Although there are certain county funds that I can try and fight to, say, limit and tell Binghamton University, if you don't change your policies to be free, to be equal, to not prefer one political organization over another, assuming that they lose their DOE investigation, which they will, based on everything in the argument that's in the terms of the investigation. There are several points where absolutely Binghamton University has no way of arguing. They did it. It's a violation of contract and law, and they're going to be punished for it. But until that happens, I can't put that law out there. But once it does, I can, as a legislator, say, okay, we may want to restrict certain funds from the county to BU until they prove that they have changed their policy and have enacted more freedoms for all students, no matter what political beliefs they may have, and to protect the lives of all students, regardless of what their political beliefs may be, and to stop tracking the political beliefs of students, which, Ben, I think that when they say you have to read these books, they're noting who's getting the books. They're noting who's read the books by comments and by also actions with their optional programs. That's tracking people. No, I don't agree with that. That is, I think that's tracking people. I think that's wrong. And it's peer pressure and it's institutional pressure. So that's what I can do. And that is very limited. Now, what's the most important thing I can do as a legislator? It's kind of like what County Executive Jason Garnar did. And that is to go out and have a press conference and tell people something. But unlike that, instead of abusing my power and saying, well, we are officially saying this, it's, yes, I'm an elected official, so I can have a press conference and easily get the press to show up. And let me tell you what I think. Why I think this is bad for my community and for, my district, my county, and our nation. So, and having the ability to have that reach more easily, to be able to get to the news, to get to more events and speak to people, that helps to move it forward as well. So that's what I would hope. The combination of those two things, ultimately, I would hope would be what I could do. And in part, I can do it if I'm not elected, and to the extent that I can, whether I win or lose, I'm going to do it no matter what. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
Right. What would be your top priority as a county legislature? What would you want to do first, day one?
Day one? Ooh, that's a tough question. Rework the budget. We're spending money stupidly, and we need jobs. This area was economically depressed long before COVID-19 ever happened. We had bad budgets before this, from good county executives and bad county executives. It's partially because of bad leadership from the state government. Governor Cuomo is a horrible economic leader. That is an absolute fact. That's why we lost 1.8 million people. That's why we're $61 billion in debt. He's a horrible economic leader. So taking that into account, there are certain pressures on us, but businesses seeing this pressure, seeing this bad economic environment, have rated, and everybody who does this rating, Forbes and Money.com and everybody else, Investor Business Daily, everybody who's done a rating of each state and its business friendliness have determined that New York State is pretty much 50th because we can't go lower out of 50 states. And we have consistently maintained that for a decade or two. We are consistently, absolutely the worst. What business wants to go to the worst business environment to run a business? I mean, unless you have a very, very specific niche, why would you do that? It's not in your best interest. It's saying, hey, I'm going to throw good money after bad and throw it out the window. But the niches do exist. And there is an absolute need. whether it's a supermarket for the north side down here in this region. I just had a laundromat a block away from my house in the middle of the District 13 that just closed. The public needs that. It was providing a service. We need another laundromat or probably another equivalent. It's not the need that went away. It's that business went away because it wasn't profitable. There was a Catholic Charities thrift store that went away. It wasn't because people don't need the cheaper yet good quality clothing. It's that there was no one going out for months on end, and it made the cost of doing business so high that they couldn't keep up. So what we see that COVID did is it took a bad situation and put it in its most extreme and eventual outcome. This was going to happen eventually. And then it finally did. It's just that, COVID moved that eventuality up really quick. So to explain what I would do is let's go back into the budget and let's rework the budget and let's cut the spending and let's cut the taxes. And you have to do both at the same time. It's not one or the other. It's both. You have to get rid of all the redundancies. Let's get rid of regulations that don't work, are not effective, that are not helpful to people. Let's cut some of the contracts we've made where, it's like your servant's warranty with Dell, where you've got a warranty for the next 5 years with your computer. Just sign this. It's fantastic. We'll service you. Well, if your computer's good quality, it shouldn't break down. You shouldn't need that. And if you do, how many times are you going to need it in 5 years? Once? Twice? Well, as a government agency, I'm not saying we don't have that contract because we may need some servicing. But if we have equipment that's halfway decent, we have people who are halfway decently trained, excuse me, then we shouldn't need a contract that's going to say, well, 50 times this year, you shouldn't be coming to us 50 times a year. And if you are, then we have the wrong product. Let's get a better product in here. And I would say, let's go back to some of those same servicers and say, let's redo the contract. How about this? You cut it down to, 40, 30 times a year and knock off 15%, 20% from what we're paying you on that service contract instead of 120%, because, excuse me, because we all know the government pays more. Everyone charges the government more. The same service contract you would get from Dell will cost the government 120% more, if not a couple 100% more, because it's the government and they're going to pay. Well, how about we have an actual negotiation and say, no, you know what? We're not going to pay you 200% more than we should be. How about we're going to pay you 100%? And if you want to cut back a little bit of the time, that's fine. And let's compromise. And that saves us money. We get rid of some of the redundancies. It saves us some money. That means we can lower our taxes, which means now we have a reason for a business to come here. I just lowered the bar of entry, the bar to break even, to make some profit. A business is willing to work with that. I'm giving them something to say, here's something you can work with. So that's day one. That's what I would want to do. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And it sounds like the longest day I've ever heard of.
Yeah, that day would be a couple months, but that would be the idea. I mean, and it continues from there because most things in government are dominoes. And the most important thing you can do is you set up the right dominoes so that when they start falling, they keep falling the right way. Most of the time in government, that's not the case. I got a domino over here. I got a domino over there. It's like they're all over the place and you tip over one and nothing else happens because our government isn't set up to be efficient. It's one of the biggest things I have a problem with. It's one of the reasons why I'm running. It's a reason why I'm upset with several elected officials right now. They're not efficient. They're not trying to get anything done beyond the next news cycle. No one's talking about what's going to happen in 2021 in the summer, what's happening in 2022. We can see, and we have elements of that now. We should have an outline to understand that we're not, that's a problem. So, and if we do these things and we set these dominoes up properly, if we could do what I was speaking about, then guess what? Not only does a business come in, that means we have people who are going to not be unemployed. They're going to have an opportunity for a job. Those jobs have a better chance of being worth more money because that business is more secure and stable, so they can afford to pay a little bit more to compete. And then you have higher paid employees. That's good for the community because they can go out, they can go to a diner or restaurant, whatever. They can do whatever they're going to do and spend the money, and every boat gets lifted. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. But I hope that answers it. Go ahead.
It's a great answer. So let's just have one or two more questions, and then you can give us a nice closing statement.
Sure, absolutely. And by the way, I'm over 21, so my beverage is legal. No one should drink that's not legal. Just in case, someone sees the video and wonders.
So you alluded to this a little bit during your speech regarding COVID-19, but I guess more specifically, what are your thoughts on Governor Cuomo's policies here in New York?
He doesn't have a policy. He's an idiot. That's about as, direct as I can be. I'm not like other people in terms of politics. I am brazen. I am blunt. I am a Marine, and I have no problem saying what I think. Governor Cuomo is an idiot. He lies to the public, and he wants power. That's why he wrote a book in the middle of a crisis talking about how great he is at handling the crisis. The crisis isn't over. Wait until it's over, then write the book. Why are you writing it in the middle of the crisis? Either that means it's not a crisis, or you're trying to capitalize on the crisis. Either way, that's not good. So I have problems with Governor Cuomo, and have a problem when you come out and you say, this region can't open up tomorrow under the rules that we've already established a week ago that they qualify for because I said so. What? He's a governor, not an emperor. You don't get to just suddenly change the rules because you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Your toast was burned and you dropped your coffee. I mean, that's not a reason. And if he actually even offered that much of a reason, that might make sense. And he didn't. He didn't even give us that. He just said to many counties, not just Broome County, but many counties, he said, no, you just can't do that. I went to Tioga County about a month ago. I was in Tioga County, and I went there as a candidate from Broome County to fight for the jobs of the casinos and the casino workers in Tioga County, because a couple hundred of those people are in Broome County. They're actually our constituents. And Tioga Downs, that casino, helps to pay $4 million a year for our bills in Broome County. It is in our best interest for them to be open and working and sending us part of their revenues every year so we can pay our bills and keep our taxes down. And our governor said, well, Tioga Downs and the other casinos can't open. Mind you, Atlantic City was open since July. The Oneida Indian Nation casinos were open since July. I said last month. That was September. So you can't tell me that, oh, it's too dangerous. Then why are the Indian casinos open? Why is Atlantic City, Las Vegas, everywhere around the nation, they're open, and he's telling us, well, you can't do it. That made no sense. So I went down there to help support them because it's also supporting us. It's good for them. It's good for us. It's good for our entire community. It's good for New York State in terms of its revenues. Everyone can recognize that except Governor Cuomo, who didn't even want to talk about it until a week later, after everyone noticed all these interviews, noticed all of these protests that we were doing, and I helped participate in several. One. And when I participated in it, and then the outcry was so large and there's so little logic to say not to do it, they turned around and went, hey guys, it's great news. You're going to be able to open up by October because I am such a great governor. No, you're an idiot and a moron, and you destroyed the economy worse than it had to be because you took you till October to do something that everyone else had done in July. For no reason, for no science, no logic, no apparent reason other than, he was pissed at the union. Really? So, yeah, I think he's an idiot. And one of the best things we could possibly do is get rid of Governor Cuomo's unlimited power, emergency powers, which I think are very much like Governor Whitmer, are probably unconstitutional. They have been used unconstitutionally, even if he has the right to have those powers, which I doubt. He has been using them unconstitutionally, and therefore he needs to have that stripped back. And we need, and you know what? It's a single party government for the state, which is horrendous. So it's only slightly better than what Cuomo was doing anyway. But at least that's a move towards the right direction and get it out of his sole power because he hasn't done anything right. That's if he did, there wouldn't be 12,000 people dead in our nursing homes. So that's how I think about that.
I guess we have a little bit of time for closing statements if you just want to make a closing statement.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you guys. I enjoy every year when I get to come back, and I love it when I can come back more than once a year to speak with you because you are the future. You have unlimited potentials at this moment. You're learning, you're growing, you're finding out new things and finding new ways to use things that we already have. And I am always pleased and happy to be able to take a moment to share some of the wisdom I've gotten over the last 52 years so that you can then apply that in new and different ways and make everything possible happen. And anyone who tells you that that's not the case, they're lying to you because they probably want to use you for something. I always love engaging, and I love sometimes you guys give me so many questions afterwards and test my mind and make sure I know what I'm talking about because you're brilliant. Going forward, we're going to have some very difficult days coming up. No matter who wins the election, there's going to be riots. If it's Trump because they hate Trump, if it's Joe Biden because they want to get more of the things that Joe Biden is already agreeing to. And from that's going to be other problems that are going to come up. And people are going to say, do what we say or else. I want you to know, have the strength to say or else. That's what America is built on. That's why America is great. That's what stopped the last time someone was trying to do this under McCarthy, is people stood up and said, no. There's a reason why we have a Constitution. There's a reason why I have a First Amendment. And a second, there's a reason why there's a 10th Amendment. Never be afraid, and I can guarantee you, you are not alone. I speak to people through my commentary, campaign, everything I do in life. I can tell you, there are thousands upon thousands of other people just like you that have the same opinions, same general thoughts that you have, that don't agree with the mainstream or are willing to ask questions about it. And I know the mainstream makes you feel like you're alone. You're not. And that's very powerful to understand. You aren't alone. Even if people are being quiet, they're there. And they're just waiting for someone to step up and say, hey, I don't agree with everything that they just said. And I hope that comforts you in the days where it might be a little tricky. But if you do want to find out more about my campaign, I hope you guys have voted. If you can vote, and I think you all can, yeah, it's college. I hope you have voted. Your voice absolutely matters.